taking back the narrative why, quote, 80% EMS, unquote, is undermining the fire service.
And I get it. Like, I don't want to go to the nursing home or on the same person 5 times in a shift, 3 times after midnight.
You are listening to EMS with your hosts, Erik and Matt Ball.
Well, Erik, I think we might push some buttons today.
I don't mind pushing buttons, especially when it's truth, right? Sometimes truth is hard, but there's always truth, I think. Anytime you have a debate, there's truth on both sides.
Yes.
And you pointed out a very interesting article to me,
yes,
which prompted this podcast today.
Yes.
So,
yeah, this article was brought to me by my chief, and he wanted to know what my opinion on it was. It was a letter to the editor in fire engineering.
Can I read the title?
Sure.
So this was in
May of
May 26, Fire Engineering, page 24. Letters to the editor, and the title here: "Taking Back the Narrative: Why, quote, 80% EMS, unquote, is undermining the fire service."
Yeah.
Interesting article. So I just like you recommended, I read the article.
Yeah.
And a lot of truth in there. I guess we can get to this in more detail later. The one thing that I thought that, you hadn't shared your opinion with me, but as I read through it, I felt like there was, because I've said that a lot. Most of what we do is EMS, which is great.
Yeah.
And
it's reality.
And I think we need to protect the tradition of the fire service as fighting fires. It's important. But to me, I felt like nothing was said in the article about meeting the demand of EMS and getting our cities to increase the budgets for funding EMS training. And that wasn't said anywhere in the article. It was more of a, protecting the fire service. And I agree we should protect the fire service. There's a lot of tradition there that needs to be protected and valued and stuff that I can't fully understand as a doctor. But when I look at the communities that we serve, depending upon where you are, most of the vast majority of what we do, I think you said it really well. You're going to save more, what'd you say? You're going to save more lives in an ambulance? Yeah.
Well, in my 20-plus year career as a firefighter, paramedic, I have had one patient that we pulled out of a fire one time. Didn't happen very often. Not saying in other municipalities it doesn't happen more often, right? Yeah. But I have had way more opportunities to save a life in the back of an ambulance than on a fire ground. It's and I would argue that in most fire departments across the country, that's probably the reality. And I would say that, protect the fire service. What are we trying to protect? Yeah. Are we trying to protect an image, or are we actually trying to protect the fire service? Because in my opinion, embracing EMS is protecting the fire service, because it is the majority of what we're doing, and the statistics that they quote in the article back that up. In their article, they think it was like 64% NFPA statistics nationally.
Yeah, this was according to the U.S. Fire Administration, USFA, in 2020, the U.S. Fire Service responded to nearly 27 million runs, with nearly 64%, or around 17.3 million, being EMS and rescue services. Only 4% were fire suppression incidents. In 2004, the Fire Service responded to around 55% EMS calls. Again, that was, 20 years earlier. And 8% fire suppression runs. And
that also takes into account large urban areas like New York, Chicago, LA, Dallas, Houston, these areas that are still fighting a fair amount of fire, right? But I would argue, I know in my departments, I've worked in only suburban departments, it's normally that number is probably 70 to 80% of our call volume is EMS related. And so there's no arguing whether it's 80% or 60%, it is the majority of what we do in the fire service. Yeah. And so again, this is my opinion that embracing EMS is what is going to protect and save the fire service. It might look different. It might be insulting to the people that, they have this idea that, they're going to get into the fire service and all they're going to be doing is, kicking down doors and saving babies from a burning building. And the reality is that's not going to happen. We just did a podcast on pediatrics, and I have worked on way many more pediatric patients as a firefighter paramedic. I have never once seen a child pulled out of a structure fire. Again, I'm not saying it doesn't happen, but it's very rare that those incidents happen. And not to mention the fact, too, this is another thing that if we're not good at EMS, that's great. You do all these cool high-speed things, whether it's pulling somebody out of a structure fire, you do some technical rescue or a water rescue or a hangar, whatever the case may be, right? You do all this cool stuff, and then you get this patient out that is now having a medical emergency. We should be just as competent as EMS providers as we are firefighters or hazmat techs or technical rescue specialists. We should be just as competent at that. Why does the fire service look down upon EMS as the stepchild, so to speak, of the fire service? Well, okay, a firefighter has a medical emergency inside of a structure fire, or there's a collapse and that firefighter sustains some sort of trauma. Do you not want that firefighter handed off to capable EMS providers that will provide good patient care to that firefighter? Great, you guys sent in the RIC team, they got the firefighter out, they did all the cool stuff that they trained to do, but now you put them in the back of the ambulance and you got two people that don't know what they're doing because they don't like EMS, and now that firefighter dies as a result of poor patient care. And that's what, I don't know, I get kind of passionate about it because I'm like, it doesn't make sense. We should be good across the board. We are not saying that we should not be capable firefighters. We should not be capable, technical rescue people, but we should be just as capable at EMS. What are you reading?
No, I agree. I was just reminded as you were talking about in the section on meaningful metrics, they went through the true measure of effectiveness is not necessarily what we're doing, but how we're responding. So I'm thinking from the firefighter perspective, comparing lives saved in a fire versus lives saved in an ambulance, I'm just asking you, is that a fair comparison? Because now again, I'm not a firefighter, but isn't the primary goal, obviously in a firefighter, fighting a fire, you want to save the people if there are people in the fire. And that's the first thing we do on scene, right? What are those teams called? The RIC teams? RIC teams, yeah. But again, saving the property is a different sort of a service we provide, right?
Yeah, and important, right? People want their house saved, right? So
I'm just saying, is that...
Do you know what the difference is? In my opinion. Again, this is Matt Ball's opinion. This is my opinion, and it's going to rub some people the wrong way.
I feel like I'm more asking questions here because I want to know what your perspective
and again,
is.
this is my perspective. This is my opinion. And in my opinion, I think it's, and again, I'm going to rub some people the wrong way, it's ego. Because tell me, if in your department, if one of your firefighters pulls a child out of a burning building, what is going to happen to that story? That's going to be on the news.
It sure will be.
That's going to be a big story, right?
Yeah.
Hero firefighter pulls baby from clutches of death and, rescues them from a structure fire, right? His picture, that firefighter's picture is going to be on the newspaper. It's going to be on the news. It's going to be on social media. And justifiably so, right? You did something heroic, right? I'm not negating that. How many times have your firefighters resuscitated successfully a pediatric patient and that story has made the news?
Well, it doesn't make the news.
It doesn't make the news.
Sometimes hospitals will celebrate it with,
of course,
their things.
Hopefully, the department celebrates it, right?
Yeah. But you're right, though. Maybe this is a cultural thing too in society, right? Where maybe there's a misappropriation of maybe a misrecognition of what we're doing.
Well, and I think that a lot of people don't understand, and that's not the public's fault, right? They don't realize. I've had physicians get in the back of my ambulance and go to the hospital with us, and they were like, "You guys have this medication? You can do that? I had no idea. I thought you guys were just ambulance drivers, right? I didn't know you guys knew all this stuff."
What's the difference between an EMT and a paramedic A lot of my physician colleagues don't
Yeah,
understand.
BLS and ALS. Really, it's and I mean, yeah, physicians don't know, nurses don't know.
Yeah.
You know, I think when I started, long ago, nurses, the respect was not there for what pre-hospital providers did. Mm-hmm. And now I think nurses and ER physicians specifically are really seeing like, whoa, these EMTs and paramedics have a dramatic impact on patient outcomes. If you're a good practitioner of EMS, you can really make an impact. But again, back to your original point of the structure fire, I say this a lot in classes, is that it's your ego. If you're a firefighter, it's your ego. Everybody wants to be the guy to pull that victim out of a fire, right? Because that's But again, we don't celebrate, and we should celebrate these EMS saves just as much. Yes, okay, I am not putting my life at risk. I get that there's a difference there, that I'm going into what we call an ideal
Doesn't happen
environment.
as often either, I suppose.
It doesn't happen as often. And again, there's not the risk to my personal safety to rescue a victim from a burning fire. I understand that. However, being a competent paramedic, right, and knowing what to do in a critical situation to that family member, do you think that's a big deal?
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. If that's your kiddo, do you want somebody coming that knows what they're supposed to do?
Yeah. Well, let me read the last sentence of the article here. We are the fire service 100% of the time, and all calls are fire calls. We are always ready and always there when it matters most. I guess it's 2 sentences, but I think if we're going to, as a fire service, which would include hazmat and all the things we talked about.
All hazards.
All hazards.
It's kind of the term, yeah.
Even they talked about, shoveling snow.
Well, that was they were making a comparison.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But of all of the different things we do this. I mean, when I say we, I'm including myself in the fire service as a medical director. But the fire service does these things as a service to their community because these are emergencies, whether it's a fire, a cardiac arrest, or the smell of gas,
car
or
accident,
smoke alarm,
technical
or whatever.
rescue. Yeah,
exactly. And so I think if that's truly the calling or what the purpose of the fire service is to respond to these community emergencies. One of the things we do is fire. One of the things we do is EMS. One of the things we do is you fill in the blank.
Agreed.
Right? Most of what we do is EMS. Most of what we do are medical emergencies.
Go based on the call volumes, correct.
Right. Now, to fight a fire, it's going to require a lot more apparatus.
Sure.
Right? You're going to require more, and with
equipment, personnel.
And with more equipment, more skills, more training. I mean, I can see why that's important.
I would argue more skills and training.
Well, I just mean, just with fire. I mean, because of all the different apparatus, because of the... I'm not comparing it to EMS. All I'm saying is because of all the different things that could happen on a fire, there's a lot of different skills you need. So it's going to require training. Sure. And I think the same thing's true with EMS. Because of all the different diseases we could potentially treat and because of all the equipment we have in an ambulance, it may not be as sexy as a tiller, but, there's a lot of equipment we need to be able to use. A lot of skills we need in diagnosing things. And there's a lot of good that we can do in those 7 minutes or more, depending upon where you are. That saves lives. So the one thing in this article that didn't address, and I told you this before we got up here, that I thought was, to me, it's like I was just waiting for the author of this chief who wrote this, to say something about it. But is that with the disproportionate amount of medical calls that we get, it seems to me we should be investing, and as it grows, we should be investing more in it. And the cities need to recognize that too. It's like
they are.
Need to, I hope, I hope so. And I think that by investing more in the training and more in the work that we do on medical calls, we are held accountable more and more. And I think as the healthcare system evolves too, they're going to be leaning on us more, and there's going to be even more money and more accountability. But that is something I think as the fire service evolves and changes and becomes more medically related, and and it's whether you recognize it or not. I mean, we all know it. I mean, a lot of these departments are changing names, right? We've gone from the blah, blah, blah fire department to fire rescue.
Fire EMS.
Yeah, all these things are changing. Our relationship with the EMS companies is if we don't have med units. Anyway, I think as we continue to change, we have to embrace those things. I think, and that's there's nothing I'm more passionate about than the fire service.
Yeah.
I love it, and I want to support those medical initiatives and be a tool in the tool belt of my firefighters.
And the fire service has constantly evolved, right? Yeah. And the fact that we have become such good EMS practitioners in the last 70 years or so is a testament to the professionalism of the firefighters, right? That they have adjusted, going from being a firefighter where that was the majority of what they did back in the 50s, 60s, 70s, right, when we were fighting a lot more fires. Yeah. But because of all the modern advances in fire protection systems, in building construction materials, fire alarm systems, we've done a good job in reducing the amount of structure fires. Yeah. That's a good thing, right? Yeah. And the fire service has done a good job in transitioning with EMS to offer this service to the citizens and the communities that they serve. And so to say that 80% is whatever the terminology is. Undermining, thank you.
I think that's what he said.
Yeah, it's
undermining the fire service.
It's not undermining the fire service.
What do you think he meant by that? I mean,
I don't know. I mean, I'm not trying to speak, badly about
No, we're not speaking badly about it. Everybody's got an opinion.
We have a difference of opinion, but I do think that it's undermining the fire. How is that undermining the fire service? It's a reality. Like data, that's a reality. You can't argue it. But if those are the numbers, those are the numbers. It's not saying that being prepared to fight a fire is not important. Being prepared to go on a technical rescue or to perform a complicated extrication is not important. That is important. Yeah. What my big thing with this article, and something that me personally I have, I guess I would say, fought with over the years, is I've known a lot of guys in the fire service that when it's time to go do fire training, they are locked in. When we're going to do, whatever, if we're pulling a line, doing a room and contents fire, if we're practicing vertical ventilation, they're locked in, right? Which great, they should be. Not saying they shouldn't be, right? But then they show up to EMS training. They don't want to be there. Their whole body language speaks that they don't want to be there. They don't pay attention. They don't care, right? And so that, to me, is the bigger issue, is that we're kind of, they're trying to, I think, maybe hold on to this traditional fire service. Well, again, the traditional fire service was based on meeting the needs of the community. And if the needs of your community are overwhelmingly EMS, then that supports the modern day fire service. You can get funding and things of that nature to support, okay, maybe you're buying more ambulances than fire apparatus, but if that's what the community needs, that's not taking away from the fire service. You're keeping the fire service alive. We're just transitioning what we're doing day in and day out. Yeah. And like you're saying, like we should be putting more time and effort into EMS training, and people should be coming in just as locked in and attentive in EMS training as they are at fire training. Now, one of the things I will say, and I would encourage fire departments out there to do this, is one of the things that I don't like is how when we do fire training, at least in the departments I've worked with, we would have our guys from our department with our equipment teaching us our way of doing things with our stuff. This is because every department does things a little bit different, right? And just the equipment that they use is slightly different. The way that you load your hose in your department might be slightly different than how you might have a side mounted pump or a midship mount. So there's little changes in how we do things, right? But we put our hands on equipment, and firefighters are tactile learners. They like to put their hands on things. That's how they learn. Then we go to EMSCs. And we might have a physician, or we might have some instructor from some other department that doesn't know us, doesn't know our culture, doesn't know our struggles.
Doesn't know how to teach.
And comes in and just, today we're going to talk about pediatric fevers. And they read off a PowerPoint, and they're just sitting in a room listening.
And I don't blame them for being frustrated with that.
I don't either. That's why I've tried to fight it. And I've argued with chiefs before and said, why do we do this? I actually had not an argument. I had a discussion with one of my former chiefs, and I challenged the idea. Why do we do fire training like this, like I just described? but then we have some dude from some other department come in and read us a PowerPoint for 3 hours every month.
You're not going to learn it.
Why do we not use our EMS people in our department to teach our people in our department with our equipment? Why do we not do more hands-on training with EMS? Run through scenarios, get out the equipment, practice IVs, IOs, innovate. That's what firefighters like.
We learn that way.
Yes, and so we made that change in my former department, and the guys loved it. We now the only people that teach in my current department are FTOs in my department, and the rank and file, they love it because they know them, they know their capabilities, they run calls with them. These instructors, they know how to teach, they know what our issues are in our department to address those issues, and so it's targeted training. They do a lot of scenarios. We've got our sim man in there every month. They're running them through. Today we're going to work on pressors and using the pump. This month we're going to go over difficult airway. This month we're going to go over whatever it is, right? We're getting up and we're putting our hands on stuff. We need to change the way that we do EMS training to match how they learn as opposed to just sitting in a room.
That's right. And that's why, we're not going to get into why we do what we do with education here at Axine CE, but I think meeting the learning needs of firefighters is a unique population of students. Yeah. And doing it with the death by PowerPoint is missing the mark. No, it doesn't work. So I think that might even contribute to the problem too, is that the training we have is boring. Not good.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of departments have great training, but it's the vast majority of, especially online training is just checking the box. It's not real training.
Right.
So that might contribute to it too. I think there's something to be said as well about some of the excitement too, that because of this kind of a culture or reputation or whatever it might be. Image. Yeah. I think a lot of it is romanticized. I think. It's just my opinion. I when I was applying to be a firefighter, that's what I wanted to do. I just wanted to fight fire. I wasn't thinking medical at the time.
I wasn't either.
But there's something in the fire service too. I don't know the answer to this, Matt, but I know in all of the places where I am a medical director, you cannot promote in EMS. You only can promote through the fire service.
Oh, you're gonna.
Is that a? I mean, from my experience, it seems ubiquitous. Like there's only a few places that I've ever heard of that you can promote in EMS.
Yeah, I have again had this. This is one of my pet peeves with the modern day fire service. So the traditional department, most departments, the promotional process is you start off as a firefighter, you promote to whatever the term each department uses. Some people say driver, some people say engineer, chauffeur, whatever it is. You promote to that position where you're driving the fire apparatus, you're responsible for pumping or setting the ladder truck, whatever. Then you promote from there to either a lieutenant, if that department has a lieutenant, or to a captain. And then, or from lieutenant, you promote to captain, then battalion chief and whatever. And so in my former department, we had shift-based EMS captains. It was a new thing. After I'd been there several years, we had EMS captains. And I had always argued that why shouldn't the FTOs, and the culture is changing. There are some departments I know of that do this, that the FTOs, if you have a formalized FTO promotional process, testing process, they're compensated as FTOs. Why are they not at the same promotional organizational structure level of a driver?
Yeah.
And I get the traditional fire thing. Whoa, you'd have thought that I just smacked their mom when I would make that statement. Like, you should be able to promote from FTO to captain. What do you mean? You mean promote to captain without being a driver? Well, first off, I'll say this. I personally don't believe you have to be a driver to be a good leader. Okay? When I first started in my fire department, you did not have to be a driver to test for captain. In a certain number of years, it was a shorter amount of time you could test for driver. In a longer period of time, I believe it was 5 years, if you were a firefighter for 5 years, you could test straight to captain. Yeah. And during that time frame, we had some firefighters that made captain, and they were some of the best captains that our department ever had. Some of them still work there. Some of them have continued to move up through the ranks. They were some of the best leaders and captains in the fire service. And I personally don't believe that just being a driver makes you a good leader. Being a good leader is more about following this rank. It's about mindset and different things. But I would also, my other argument was, okay, as a paramedic, as an FTO, I would be completely by myself with maybe a new EMT or a new paramedic that I was training and my partner, and I am responsible for making split-second clinical decisions on this patient. Mm-hmm. A driver, he's got an officer with him on every single call that he can bounce things off of. He's got a firefighter. If he's on a structure fire or most incidents, there's going to be multiple companies there. And so he's got lots of people that he can use as resources. I will argue all day long. Every day that I was an FTO, I was doing mentoring. I was doing documentation. I was doing teaching, training, walking through the new guy through how to be successful in your career while the driver was sitting over in the recliner. And I'm not knocking drivers. Like, I love my drivers. That's a great position. If that's what you aspire to be, God bless you, go for it. But to say that is a more important role than the FTO that is doing these things every single day. They're doing more leadership things than the driver is in most departments, because it's the officer of that company that's doing all the administrative tasks. The firefighter or the FTO is doing all the administrative tasks.
Can I ask you a question?
Please.
So I was on a fire. We had structure fire.
Man, we're gonna rock some
fully involved fire, and I was there before the fire department got there.
I remember you telling me
my neighborhood.
Yeah.
And they were there and they set up and all that stuff. But it was anyway. I'm just asking you from a training standpoint. So I noticed that my captain was he was heavily involved in, the driver was doing all the getting the LDH hooked up and all that stuff. Mm-hmm. And then the battalion chief was there with incident command, and our chief was there too. And you could see there was a lot of planning and delegation and
tasks
and strategy, where to set up and all this stuff.
Yep.
If you have been an FTO and you've been, medically minded or whatever, and you that's been your niche because you just love EMS. And then you promote to a rank in the fires in your department,
lieutenant, captain, whatever. Yeah,
you are then going to be the one making some of these strategic decisions. Correct. Maybe with less experience in the fire service. I mean, as a firefighter. I'm just asking the question.
Yeah.
Is that part of the resistance to this? Because these eventually, I guess, if you keep climbing the ropes, right, you're going to become a battalion chief and you're going to be running incident command, right? So, and then would that be some of the pushback on this? Is that getting somebody who spent 10 years or whatever as an FTO didn't have that 10 years of experience as a driver engineer, where maybe they wouldn't understand? I mean, I'm sure they understand it, but would that be some of the pushback on the what we're talking
mindset
about?
Yeah, I think that first off, it's tradition. I think that's the number one thing, is this is how we have always done it.
Okay.
Right? That's how we've always done it. So I think that's the number one thing. The other argument I've had is, and I not necessarily disagree with that, is that as a driver, you have a lot of what they call windshield time with the officer. Yeah. So on every call you're learning from your officer how to respond to these emergencies. Don't disagree with that, right? Yeah. However, in every fire department that I've worked with that runs EMS, you still fight fire off the ambulance. Yeah. I've fought many fires while I was riding on the ambulance.
Okay, cool.
So absolutely, yeah. If we had a structure fire in our district, I'm going, putting my gear on just like the guy riding backwards on the truck or the engine, and I'm going in. So I'm fighting just as much fire on an ambulance as the guy on the fire truck is.
I'll be a devil's advocate again. You and I have talked about this, and you've experienced it now that you're in administration. Your job in leadership is a whole lot different than your job
100%.
When you were riding, when you were a firefighter, right? So I wonder too. Again, I'm just trying to imagine the pushback on some of this as being maybe the. I guess this is really culture, is what I'm trying to say. Is that when you're in leadership, things are a whole lot different. When you're wearing is it a white hat?
Yeah, if you're a chief.
Like a battalion chief or whatever, or a red hat, I guess that would be the captain.
Well, red helmet.
Red helmet, sorry.
Yeah, the white hat would be their uniform hat, yeah.
That's a totally different
helmet,
role. When you're in, like, now that you're in leadership, right, and as an administrative servant in your fire department, an admin, your job has totally changed.
Yep.
Totally different, right?
Yep.
Managing people where, and I'll be transparent. I remember when I was a teacher, I was a vice principal for a while. I went right back to being a teacher again.
Oh, it's easier.
It was, yeah.
I would say it's easier to be in operations than be an admin.
I agree. It takes a unique skill set.
Yes.
And you kind of said it before, is being a leader is more than just your...
well, and let me say this, too, back to your point about being a driver versus an FTO. I am not saying, and have never said, that if you're going to promote as an FTO to lieutenant or captain or to an officer, a fire officer position, you 100% need to be tactfully minded. You have to know firefighting
you
strategy.
You got to pass those promotional exams
Absolutely.
Just like everybody else,
You've
right?
got to understand fire behavior. You've got to understand how to perform extrications or technical rescues.
Yep.
I am not negating at all. You have to be a capable fire officer. But what bothers me is that a lot of departments or guys that I've talked to said, well, if you go the EMS route, you can only stay in EMS. You can't cross over to the fire side.
Yeah, I've heard that before, yeah.
But if you're a fire captain, you can cross over to the EMS side. I'm sorry. Hang on a second. Wait a minute. So you're saying as an EMS guy, I have to prove myself tactically. I'm not disagreeing with that. But I can't cross over and if I'm a good leader, you're a good leader, period, right? Yes, you have to know tactics, but how can you do one way and not the other way? That really bothers me, that mindset, because that's what we did. If you were a fire captain, you could move to an EMS captain, but they were making the argument if you took the EMS promotional pathway, you could not cross back over to ride on an engine or a truck. Well, wait a minute. Why not?
Yeah,
why not? I don't understand that. Because guess what? If you're riding on an engine or a truck, you're still responding to medical emergencies. Sure, you might not be doing direct patient care, but you're still in charge of the overall scene.
Yeah.
You should have a general idea of what's going on, right? That would be some of the best captains I had were good EMS people, and they would jump in the back and help. If I had a critical patient, and I was thankful for them that they were willing to jump back there and help me, even if it was just documentation or they knew what questions to ask the family, right? They didn't have to necessarily do the skills. That's what I teach my guys now is, look, drivers, officers, if you're on a CPR or you're on a critical patient, let the paramedics do paramedic stuff. You're in a support role. Obviously, your number one job as the officer is keeping your people safe, right? You make sure the scene is safe for them. That's your number one job. Yep. 2, but then you can be getting out hand heavy. You can be using the app. You can be getting information from the family or whatever it is and documenting that. Or you could be using a checklist. If they're going to RSI somebody, we have RSI checklists, right? As a driver, stand back with the checklist. You don't need to know all the things. I get it. Now you're focused more on driving and pumping, or you're an officer. You're focused on, fire tactics. That's fine. But then when you're on an EMS call, pull out that checklist. Okay, guys, we're about to go through this RSI procedure. Hey, do we have SPO2? What's their SPO2 at? Yeah, we got that. Hey, what's their end title at? Hey, what are we doing here? Hey, do we got the meds pulled up? And you're just reading off a checklist. That is helping your paramedics while they're physically doing the skills. You're helping them manage these patients. I've been on numerous calls where the captain just stands in the corner, does nothing, or goes back. I'll be in the engine while we're sitting there working a critical patient in the back of an ambulance, and they're like, well, I'll be in the engine. Well, how does that look to your guys? You're basically, that would be, I relate the load and go, or the let's just go to the hospital. Let's give them a dose of diesel. And again, I'm about to blow some brains out here because this drives me nuts.
Why is it blow brains?
Because people don't want to let go of this image or this traditional. And again, I'm not saying that being a good firefighter is not important. I'm not saying that. But my scenario is this. If I walked up to a structure fire and it's ripping and we force that door and I've got the hose line or we're doing search or whatever it is we're doing, or I look up at the roof and I'm like, I'm not getting on that roof. Yeah. There's too much fire in there. I'm not going in there. I would be crucified as a coward in my department, and rightfully so. Yeah. Like that's your job. That is your job to go into that IDLH and, within reason, right?
Sorry, I don't know.
Risk basically in danger of life and health, right? Okay. You're going into this high safe. I'm putting my safety at risk because there's a lot of fire in there. That is my job. Yeah. Obviously, we risk a lot to save a lot. We risk a little to save a little. If the building is fully involved, it's going to be torn down. We're saving the slab. There's nobody inside. There's nothing to save. Why are we putting our lives at risk? That's stupid, right? That's dumb. But if there's somebody in there, right, and there's a lot of fire, we're going to do everything that we can to get that person out and put our personal safety at risk, right? If I say, I'm not doing that, I'm not going to, they'd be like, get out of here, and I'd probably be terminated. And I probably should be. Tell me the difference between that and you have a critical patient that you have the ability to do something to help, and you say, well, I'm too scared to do that skill. I don't want to do that. Let's just go to the hospital. You've just quit on that patient. You've just quit on that member of your community that is entrusting you with taking care of their emergency. You just quit on them and said, let's just take them to the doctor at the ER. Yeah. Right? And so to me, I don't see a difference in that. You know, I don't personally see a difference in that.
Well, I think there's, I guess I'll ask you this question. So is it, I mean, part of it's the culture, right? Sometimes as a driver or as an engineer or, you know, going up the ranks in the fire service, you kind of get further and further away from the EMS calls, right? And so when you are in a situation where you're in an engine and you're the first one on for some reason, maybe there was a delay with the med unit or who knows what, you could be there for a significant amount of time.
Yep.
And be in a situation where you're going to need to know your stuff.
Yeah, absolutely.
So have we lost the training, the commitment to training for EMS with
I think that people have gotten burned out, and I do understand the burnout because 911 does get abused. You know that just as well as I do, right? People call 911 for...
I was going to go burnout next. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, honestly, I mean, people call, you know, like people are calling 911 for a headache. Like, come on. I mean, you know, we're going to show up. We're going to treat you nicely. We're going to take you to the hospital if that's what you want to do. But understand that you're taking an emergency service out of service for your headache when your husband is at home and you have two working automobiles in the driveway. He could have easily, this isn't a life threat. I'm not talking about somebody that's having a stroke or something. This is not a life-threatening situation. And now somebody could experience a truly life-threatening situation in that same area. Now their response is delayed.
Well, you said it. People don't fully understand.
No, they don't. And they just think that it's interesting.
It's entitlement.
Like yes.
I pay for this with my taxes.
I'm calling 911. Yeah. But people get burned out because a lot of what we do, and I don't know the specific numbers, but I would say 80% of the EMS calls that we run aren't life-threatening emergencies.
Well, I can tell you, and I think that the ER is a reflection of what we see in the pre-hospital environment, in EMS.
Yep.
And I can tell you statistically, and this is a New York University study, and by the way, they pulled out behavioral emergencies from this. These weren't included. 49.2% were deemed non-emergent, didn't need to be in the ER.
Yep.
So if half of our patients in the ER don't need to be there, right? And 1/3 of most agencies, the patients are refusing.
Yes.
So of the patients that get to the ER, that come to the ER, half of them didn't need to be there. It's really over half when you include behavioral health emergencies. So I would wager that you're probably close. I mean,
I would say at minimum 50% don't need to be calling 911 for their emergency. You know, and there's this misnomer that, well, if I go by ambulance, I'll get in faster. No, you won't.
We'll just go to triage.
You're
just taking them to triage.
Before 2020, I would say, you probably might get in a little bit faster. Since 2020,
depending upon how busy they are.
Well, yeah, exactly. But I never before 2020 took a patient in that I had given narcotic pain medicine to that didn't get a room.
Yeah.
Since 2020, I've had that happen where it's just like, we have no rooms. We have no rooms. They're relatively stable. Yeah. Okay, they got an IV. You gave them a little bit of fentanyl. They need to go in the waiting room because we just don't have any rooms. And that's a reality. But again, I think that a lot of people have a bad taste in their mouth for EMS because a lot of it is you're getting the nursing home calls.
I was out in a large urban area somewhere in the United States, in the Southwest, a huge urban area, and I was in one of their fire stations and just listening, and the vast majority of their calls all through the night, transients and drugs and behavioral health emergencies, Good Samaritan seeing some transient sleeping on the sidewalk.
No, he's not dead.
They call 911 thinking that, they're
thinking they're doing the right thing.
But the problem is that it's the reality now of the fire service is where there's a lot of really big problems in our society, a lot of huge problems in our medical community, our healthcare system, that's creating this repetitive problem with no solution, and they're the ones getting called they're the ones that are being called to the same person
over and over again.
And a patient
and that doesn't want help most of the time. Yeah,
it's hard, and this creates, like you said, burnout, and this is another reason why, hey, get me off of the med unit.
Yeah. Which
So,
is why a lot of people promote, I want to get off of this thing, because that's once you promote. Now, some departments, you promote to driver, you're the supervisor on the ambulance. There are departments that do that. But I think, a lot of guys, they get worn out with EMS just because they're running on a lot of calls that don't need, and I get it. Like, I don't want to go to the nursing home or on the same person 5 times in a shift, 3 times after midnight. No, nobody wants to do that, right? Yeah. But again, kind of back to the article, one of the things that they mentioned in here, which I felt was a little bit misleading, is they talked about snowplows in the Midwest, and they said, well, you're not going to reduce the number of snowplows in the Midwest just because you have 1 year of less snow. Yeah. Okay, yeah, you're right. They're not going to do that. Mm-hmm. They're going to look at the global numbers or the long-term numbers, and they're going to say, yeah, typically we need this equipment. However, here in the state of Texas, we don't have. I grew up outside Chicago. It would snow. We'd have snow plows and salt trucks and the whole thing, right? Sure. It was part of the infrastructure. We don't have that here. Yep. Why? Because it's not needed that much. Yep. We get maybe 1 snow or ice storm a year, right? And it's usually gone within 2 or 3 days. They might come by. I mean, we have some plow trucks. Usually, yeah. And when it's not, like, things in 2021, things shut down for a week, right? Because that happens once every 100 years. It was a very unusual event. Typically, we get that 1 snowstorm. Mm-hmm. We do have some plow trucks, certainly not to the number that they do in the Midwest or in the northern part of the country. We don't put salt on the roads here. Why? Because it's not needed. Mm-hmm. We're not going to spend all this money on this resource that we're not using. That would be dumb. That doesn't make any sense. And these people in positions of power aren't stupid. They can look at the numbers and go, wait a minute, you guys fought how many structure fires last year? But yet you ran how many EMS calls last year? Wait, it looks like the majority of what you're doing is this. So, and I get it. Like, there's guys that struggle with that. Like, well, we're not going to be buying fire trucks. There's a lot of departments that are looking at a squad concept. Wait, we could have a squad running on 90% of the emergencies that were going on. And I'm not just talking about EMS, and we could save a lot of money, right? So again, I think that the fire service has evolved over the years from, bucket brigades to horse-drawn to, motorized apparatus to more technical rescues and added on EMS. And I think that EMS is so busy. You're so busy when you're on the ambulance. Another thing I'll disagree with them on is that the fire apparatus are the workhorses of the fire service. Yeah. Not in my experience. I mean, if I was on the engine, that was usually a break because you're running 5 calls.
Our engines get dispatched with everything. So.
It depends on priority dispatching. Same in my department. The engine or the truck goes on every EMS
the people
call.
On the
But they're typically recalled. They're not transported to the hospital. In my other department, we had priority dispatching. So our ambulances would go out on a lot of calls without backup because the call didn't need it, right? Yeah. And so I was making 10 to 12 calls a shift where the engine was running 5 or 6. Yeah. And that's not, everywhere's a little bit different, right?
That makes sense. Do I have time to make another point?
We got time. Make another point.
So I always get really frustrated in the emergency department when I have administration tell me that we don't need X number of staffing.
Hospital administration.
Yes. And then they'll show me numbers and they'll say, you look at this, you don't need this. Right. Historically, I mean, look in the last quarter. Look at your census here in the ER. At these times, we can take some of your staff away. And to me,
haven't your censuses gone up?
Well, they have, but I'm just saying. But in a lot of the administrative folks in the hospital system that I work at are incentivized to minimize staffing.
Yeah, because it saves money.
Yeah, and staffing is expensive.
Sure.
And you don't want to waste money. I get it. That's wise. But the thing that frustrates me is their philosophy isn't like ours. I think in emergency medicine, we hope for the best, but we prepare for the worst. We're prepared for that MCI. If I get, one night we had a massive trauma head-on collision, 9 patients. I didn't receive all 9 patients, but we heard this thing happening on the radio. Right. We split them up amongst the facilities in the area, but it could have been 18. And, I mean, it could have been who knows how many, or mass shooting.
Yep.
We, in the ER, that's what I think about, and
Yes.
that's what I prepare for,
Yep.
is being ready to go for a mass event where I'm in big trouble and I need to have, and either way it's going to be an MCI, because the definition of an MCI, you don't have enough staff to take care of
Overload
it.
your
Right.
system, yeah.
So, but my point though is to minimize staffing based on data is not emergency medicine.
Yeah.
We are prepared for that terrible, unthinkable event as best we can.
Yep.
And I wonder if the same thing would be true, in Los Angeles, that big fire that came through and they didn't have the water they needed. It's kind of controversial. I don't
Yeah.
really know the details of it.
Yeah.
But in the fire service too, even though we may not get as many fire calls, being prepared for that massive event. Now, I don't know what that means as far as apparatus goes, but being prepared for that massive fire event that could occur anytime, anywhere,
Right.
or the West explosion or
Yep,
whatever,
yep.
having the capability to be able to keep the community safe and
Yeah.
to be able to run on that type
Yep.
of a massive fire that's going rampant over. I don't think that was like 3,500 houses or something like that. Is there some of that to this, where that philosophy of, me being frustrated as an ER doctor to have administration tell me I don't need so much staff, and I'm like, hold on a second, we never know when this is going to happen. We should not decrease staff just because last week we didn't need it. Is there some of that too with fire, and like you never know when you're gonna?
Well, I think
because you're training for those big things.
Sure. So a couple of things. So yes, you could have a major incident, right, at any time. Anybody could have that. It's all a risk versus benefit, right? How many millions and millions of dollars are we willing to spend to have the max amount of fire trucks, fire engines, personnel, everything fully staffed for an incident that might happen once in 30 years, right? So yes, we want to protect our communities as best we can. That's also fiscally responsible.
Right.
Right?
Agreed.
And so the other thing is that you have mutual aid, right? You get a big incident, you're calling in surrounding departments. Hey, we need some help, right? So your surrounding departments can send over they can split. Okay, yeah, we can send you a truck, we can send you an engine, a tanker, whatever it is, right? And you might have 5 other departments that say, hey, if we have something, you guys agree to send us some help. If you have something, we'll agree to send you some help, right? Because those incidents are so rare, right? Thankfully, they're so rare that you can't put a fire station on every corner with a fire engine, fire truck, ambulance, police car. Like, you can't do that. Right? You can't, in a perfect world maybe, but you can't do that because it's not fiscally responsible. Now, reducing staffing, even though it's expensive, the fire service is different, because not only are you talking about staffing, you're talking about $1 million apparatus. $1 million, $2 million plus dollar apparatus that it costs, that's just sitting there, they're running 1 or 2 calls a day. How many of those do you want to have that's costing your city, your taxpayers, millions of dollars, and they're running, a handful of calls, and there was 0 big incidents in the last 5 years or 10 years or whatever it is, right? So I think everything is a risk versus benefit. And 2, a hospital, they're a profit-driven agency, so they're worried about, they want to make money, right? Cities aren't interested in making money, right? They're wanting to save money, be fiscally responsible. And so I think that they build their fire departments and police departments and all the public safety things to the best of their ability within a budget, right? Let's look at the data. What is the data showing that you're doing? And again, that's what this article is speaking to. What are you guys really doing? Okay, 80% of your calls are EMS. Okay, well, maybe we fought, 10 structure fires last year. Okay, well, maybe we could prolong the life of our fire trucks. Maybe not reduce the numbers, but maybe instead of a 10-year replacement plan on fire trucks, we go to a 15-year, because you're not getting as many miles in 10 years. And and we save that money, and instead we're going to put another ambulance in service. Again, that's not undermining. Thank you. I keep forgetting the word they use. That's not undermining the fire service. That's keeping the fire service alive. That's keeping it current. Because again, as we go on, structure fires are decreasing and EMS calls are increasing. And I believe they're only going to, sure, we're going to get waves where, different cities, oh man, this year we had more structure fires than we did the last 10 years. Okay. But I think that EMS calls are going to continue to increase. And like you said earlier, the healthcare system is going to continue to lean on pre-hospital providers.
I believe it will.
Yeah.
I really do. It has to. We're overutilizing our healthcare system. We should be able to transport patients to multiple different types of facilities to provide the best care they need.
Behavioral health.
We can't all just go to the ER.
Yes.
It's not. That's primitive
Have
care.
to be more strategic in how we do things. 100%. Yep. I just think, the article, again, I'm not harping on these guys. They're entitled to their opinion. What I don't want is I don't want people to not look at the data and not look at, okay, what are we really doing and what is the best use of the taxpayer dollar for the community? What are we really running on? Does the community really call 911 80% of the time for a medical-related emergency, or is it for a fire emergency? Obviously, in the city of New York, they're still fighting a lot of fire up there. You're not going to reduce fire trucks up there, and Detroit and these big. They're still fighting a lot of fire up there, right? And so you need those resources. In a lot of suburban departments, you might not need that many resources. We need to be able to adapt as we have over the last 100+ years. We need to be able to adapt to what this community needs are. That is embracing the fire service. That's not undermining the fire service.
I think something.
In my opinion.
No, I think in my experience, I'll speak to being an ER doctor, and I think firefighters might identify with this. Depending upon the level trauma center I'm working at, I may only see 10% trauma patients.
Right.
But in emergency medicine, a lot of what we train for are those traumatic injuries that need to be emergently cared for. I mean, those are when seconds count, and that's what I love.
Yep.
And to be able to deliver that kind of care and save lives, that gets my blood flowing.
I agree.
And if you go to most ERs, like the ERs that I worked at, these level 1 or 2 trauma centers, there may be maybe a half a dozen to maybe 6 to 12 trauma bays. And then depending upon the size of the ER, you might have 30 or 40 regular beds, right? Well, if I was so excited about trauma and my ER was just a bunch of trauma bays, I wouldn't be serving my community well, because the percentage of patients that come in with traumatic injuries that need a trauma bay. I in some ways I feel like that might be a good analogy here, maybe to a certain extent to what we're talking about, where it would be foolish for me to build an ER that only had 2 regular beds and then 47 trauma bays.
For one trauma patient.
Right. And I don't think maybe that's the extreme, obviously.
But you're making the point.
And then I felt like this article was saying, hey, hold on a second here. We like our trauma bays, and we got to stop focusing on EMS because this is one of our services we do. I think that's kind of...
I don't care if 80%, that's undermining the trauma bay.
I don't think EMS is undermining the fire service.
No, I don't think so. I don't think that statement is, which I think is what their point was, is that statement is undermining the fire service. I don't as an ER doctor, and I hope as a firefighter, but as an ER doctor, I can say this from my own experience, is that I don't feel undermined by recognizing the fact that most of what I do in the ER is, like you've said, belly pain and what is it? What do you call lift assist and poo-poo pains.
Yeah, because most of what I do...
Well, you don't do lift assist, but...
most of what I do is the non-acute type call. And 50% of what I see doesn't even need to be there. Right. And the vast majority of the rest of them aren't going to die.
Right.
But I live for those patients that need life-saving care in the ER that I can deliver.
Yes.
And that's what gets my blood flowing.
Yes.
And if I had somebody come in and tell me that that's not as important as this or something like that, I would be a little frustrated. And that's not what we're saying here. Yeah. I think what we're saying here is that we need to recognize the fact that as a fire service, or me as an ER doctor, as emergency medicine, as a community, we need to recognize the fact that our patient populations are what they are. And to meet the demands of that patient population, I need to be prepared to service that community of emergency patient.
Yes.
And so I will have facilities in the emergency department to meet that demand.
Yeah.
And I think what we're seeing right now, it seems to me almost like a misappropriation of funds in some way, where so much of what we do in EMS, we can't afford to get a small whatever device potentially, but we got these multi-million-dollar
fire
apparatus, and the department right next to us has the same thing.
Yeah.
So I don't know the answers, and I think that's what the article is saying is that EMS is undermining that. I don't think.
Well, they're saying that statement is undermining to the fire service.
Yes.
That's how I interpret it. But I look at it like this: the fire service is an insurance policy, just like you said, right? We're prepared for the worst emergency.
Yeah.
The fire service, the fire department is an insurance policy that if somebody's house catches fire, if there's a whatever, we're there to respond, right? That's what they're paying for. It's an insurance policy. You're not going to buy flood insurance living in Iowa because you're probably, that would be dumb, right? You don't need flood insurance in Iowa because it doesn't flood in Iowa. At least I don't think it does.
I was born in Iowa, and you can have floods in Iowa.
Okay, you can. You get my point,
I see what
right?
you're saying. Yes.
But that's like saying, well, we want to put all of our money or 80% of our money into flood insurance and none of our money on tornado or natural disaster insurance.
Right.
That wouldn't make any sense because you're probably more likely to have a tornado rip your house down than the house to be flooded out. Or like you go to California, you live in the mountains of California.
I'm not going to pay for hail damage.
You're not going to pay for hail damage in California, but you probably are going to pay for fire damage because that's the highest threat, right? That's what the way I look at it is that the fire service is an insurance policy, and you have to look at what's the greatest threat to my community. Is it fire? Maybe it is. Then you need to keep investing money into fire trucks and firefighters and all that kind of stuff. If it's more EMS related stuff, then you need to put your money in that bucket. Again, I'm not saying get rid of all fire apparatus and put ambulances. That's not what I'm saying. And I'm sure that there's people out there that are cussing at me and throwing Red Bulls at their radios or earphones or whatever. I want to punch this guy in the face. But it's just reality, right? You have to be common sense. These people in power that make these financial decisions for the fire departments, they're not dumb people, right? They can pull the numbers. They can look at the data and say, hey, you guys did so many of this and so many of this last year. If you're an insurance policy, we had more flooding than we had fires. Let's put more of our money in flooding than fires, right? Let's only put 20% in fires and 80% over here because this is what we're seeing more of.
And it's not because it's less important.
No, it's just the reality of what the numbers are.
Trauma is what gets me excited. And because I only have 10 trauma bays in my 50-bed ER, it doesn't mean it's less important.
Right.
It's just being appropriate.
Yeah.
And I think we're just saying anything's more or less important here.
Right.
I had trouble with the title saying that.
Yes, I agree.
That's undermining the fire service.
And I also want to say, I love my firefighters. I love being a firefighter. I love it. It's the greatest job in the world.
So anything I said, disregard it.
No, not at all. You work very closely with firefighters, and having a medical director is a huge part of the fire service. We couldn't do our jobs without medical directors. That's a fact. But I love firefighters. I love the fire service, and I love the meaning behind the fire service. If you really look back at when you thought about becoming a firefighter, at the bottom line is because you wanted to help people.
Yeah.
That's what it should be about. It wasn't, I only want to help people if they're in a fire. I only want to help people if it's a technical rescue. No, you want to help people. I understand we can get burned out running the BS calls of EMS, right? Because that's what people call it. I understand that. But if you're truly there and your heart's in the right place, that I just want to help people, right? It doesn't matter what their emergency is, you're going to help them. That is a successful fire department. That is embracing, as they said, the mission of the fire service. Doesn't matter what the emergency is, whether it's EMS or whatever. We're responding and we're bringing our best trained, highly professional people to your emergency to handle whatever your emergency is. And we're not going to negate that it's just an EMS emergency and it's not a structure fire or something cool where we get to put on our gear and do whatever we want to do. But again, I love my firefighters. I love the fire service. I think it's a fantastic thing. I hope that more and more people join the fire service because you're truly doing something above yourself. You're serving your fellow man. It's more than just a paycheck.
You're part of something a whole lot bigger than you.
Yes. And I just think that EMS is an evolving part of the fire service. I think it's a great thing that the fire service has. And I think the fire service, the modern day fire service, would look a lot different had we not adapted with EMS, 70 years ago or whatever it was. I think it was a great union of the two things because we're well suited for it. But anyway, I hope we didn't tick off too many people, but this is just Matt and Eric's opinion on things. And, so
I think I'll say as we finish this up, I know we're probably done with time.
Yeah, we're good.
Is that as a physician, there are a lot of physicians that like things. There's nothing I like more than serving firefighters and paramedics, EMTs, ambulance companies, all of that. Being able to use my passion for the human machine to help people understand the human machine better so they can treat diseases better. There's nothing gets me more excited. So I hope that we can be a force for that, respectfully, in a fire service that is what they love. Just like an ER doctor loves trauma, they love the fire. I get it, and I think that should be celebrated.
Yeah, I like fighting fire too.
I get it.
Yeah.
So.
But anyway, well, it was a good one. We'll see you on the next one.
Be safe out there.
Thank you for listening to EMS, the Erik and Matt Show.